Fabulous. Welcome everybody to Sunday night, a little bit of spook show here. So we are Global Strangeness. We are three strangers that come together with a love of spooky stuff and folklore and all that fun stuff. We have Scott, Jeremy, and myself, Deborah. And this week's topic is vampires, which is I'm pretty stoked about because who doesn't love a good vampire story? But before we get into that, we do have another darkness that came upon the world on this date a few years back. So happy birthday, Scott.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thought I was squeaking past that.
Yeah, no way. We're not letting you off the hook that easy. So yeah,
Fucking
this one's
Facebook.
to you. You can,
Fucking Facebook.
Yeah, right. Thank God for it. I wouldn't even remember my own mom's birthday probably. So, and that being said, there's another darkness that descended on the world today, and that would be me with a pair of hair cutting scissors. I don't know what happened. Crazy hair. Don't care. Don't even mention it. Don't want to hear it. So, anyways, with that, let's get into it with vampires. Did you guys have fun researching this one?
I tried getting as much as I could. I was like 4 or 5 hours yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's vampire-esque. Vampire-esque.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know how believable
Yeah.
most stuff is, but anyways, whatever. It is what
Well,
it is.
It was pretty damn easy for me because I knew which two cases I wanted to bring up here because they're both famous cases, and
Yeah.
one of them is the one I use in my show as the possibility of vampires case. So
Super. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So I guess the first thing, what a vampire is basically a creature from folklore or possibly the real deal thing. And it subsists by feeding on vital essence of the living. So generally everybody knows it to be drinking blood. That's how it gets its kind of life force. It's eternal. It's often portrayed as undead creatures that visit the loved ones of, and they cause mischief and death to people that they knew while they were alive. I did read that. So, and it, I think, kind of originated mostly from Eastern Europe in the late 17th and 18th centuries. However, the very first vampire legends came about from Greek mythology, from what I could see. So if you want to start with that, the Greek mythology stuff, that was a human. He started out as a human named Ambrosio. Did you guys touch on this at all? How it ties in with Greek mythology?
I saw a little about the Chinese lore, but not in the Greek.
Yeah.
Much.
Well, so anyways, this was an Italian-born adventurer, and he ended up in Delphi, Greece, and it's a big Greek mythology kind of story. And if you go on ghostsandmonsters.com, they have a really good, it's quite lengthy, but the whole myth as it goes through. But basically this guy goes through a series of blessings and curses. It starts out as kind of a love story, and he's, going through all these adventures, and he's getting blessings and then curses, and he just ends up transitioning in the end from all these different things happening to him. He ends up being the first vampire. And so he's quite powerful. He was born sometime in the 13th century, and he survived through the Greek Dark Ages. And that's when he became a vampire in 1410. That was pretty specific. That's basically the original one. The first kind of story I could find that's not like Greek mythology is about Giori Grandi. And so he lived from 1579 to 1656. And he was a villager from the region of Styria, which is like modern day Croatia. And he may have been the first person kind of described as a vampire in historical records. So this was a real person that was believed to, again, in the newspapers, it was believed that he really was a vampire. And they referred to him as a Sturgio or Sturgeon, which is a local word for vampire or warlock. So he displayed kind of those kind of traits or whatever. And that's really the first recorded one that was kind of seriously where they were thinking, or from what I found anyways, where they were thinking that was an actual vampire. So And then in 1819, 80 years before Dracula, before Bram Stoker's Dracula, there was a book. So John Policio, don't know if I'm saying that. He published a book called Vampire, and so that was, even though Bram Stoker's became kind of the benchmark, like every, that's Dracula, that's the one everybody goes to. Everybody, when you think of vampire, you automatically go to that. Although, have you ever? So that is loosely based on Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever researched that? Because he's way scarier than a vampire, honestly. Vlad the Impaler.
Oh yeah,
was nuts.
He was. He was one of the worst rulers ever. Like he was I mean, just the head on stake thing in front of his freaking fortress was, the amount of them was freaking insane when people would drive up there.
Well, he used to dip his dinner bread in his enemy's blood. He would have his enemies piked up all around him as he ate.
Yeah, and he took some big gold dish, which was worth, everything. Like it was gold, and he put it down in the village, and nobody would even touch it. Like nobody would steal it because people were that scared. He wanted to see, and nobody would even touch it, and they were poverty stricken. And so you're freaking terrifying. So I've always wondered. I'm like, why would they take this horrifically scary guy with a great story and turn it into a vampire story? Like, I don't get that. Like, just right about, I don't know. Anyways, I always thought that was so weird.
Well, he just got the name
stories
from Dracula, right? And that means like dragon or whatever. But
that's right. Yeah.
That in the Baltics or whatever, like the vampires were still a huge lore.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. He wrote the story or whatever.
Well, and I think so. You're saying that he dipped his bread in blood. Like, I think there's a lot of crossover between, where people enjoy, drinking blood.
Yeah.
To where it's like, are you a vampire where you're like this, sucking blood, puncturing, and undead basically. So it kind of blurs, right? Because there are humans that do this. So
yes, there are.
Yeah. So, and the way you become a vampire traditionally is you either are bitten or it's a witch. Some people think it's a witch, or it's some sort of just an evil being, or it's a person who's possessed by an evil being. Yeah. So, and I think, so I found this interesting. So talking about if there's any vampires now, they did a survey in 2015. This is in the States, this is you guys. And so the Atlanta Vampire Alliance did a survey, and there's at least 5,000 people who identify with themselves as being vampires because they really do enjoy drinking blood. And one thing with the creature, some of the lore is that you have to invite them in, because if they just come into your house, they get weak. And so you could probably fight them off. So that's because you have all the movies and cartoons and whatever, they're like hovering around trying to get you to let them in. And that's why I didn't realize that diminishes their powers unless they're invited in. So kind of like the black-eyed children.
Yeah.
Kind of bully you or seduce you or do whatever to try and get in. But they can't.
I didn't know it
in.
weakened them. I thought it just like they couldn't come in.
Yeah, no, that's I read it weakens them, so they wait for a invitation in. So just say no, but some of them are good looking, so I don't know.
Yeah,
that's how they get in. And then
they sparkle for a reason,
right? Yeah, I mean the whole Twilight thing, right? Like all these beautiful, sparkly people. Anyways, whatever. And then I did, for fun, I looked up to see what's in, for Canadian kind of vampires, if there was anything. And I found the story is pretty interesting. So this is true. This is factual. So 80 years before the Titanic sunk, there was a whaling vessel called the Shannon. And it collided with an iceberg just off the east coast of Canada, and it went into the Atlantic. And all the sailors were in the sea. It was just, it was basically the Titanic on a, smaller scale or whatever, not a luxury ship. But these poor guys were out there like clinging to this half-sunk ship, and they were actually starting to die from dehydration because there's nothing to drink. They're starving, but dehydrating more than anything, I guess. Until the one guy was like, you know, because as they were dying off, they were like, we could drink the blood of the newly died, you know, the last person who died. It's still warm and it's, you know, whatever. So that's what they did. They started portioning out the blood from whoever is dying off and staying alive like that. And the one guy in the article, he ended up saying that, you know, you normally this would be disgusting, but it was the most, you know, amazing thing, and, you know, like the most wonderful thing you'd ever put to your lips, basically, in that. So I don't know if he went home and continued on drinking blood, but yeah, that'd be something, eh? Like, that's just regular people having to drink blood, and the one guy ended up liking it. So, like, Wendigo.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that would be very hydrating.
Well, it's a weird, and like, yeah, I don't know, but I guess it's weird. Like, I don't know, and I'm like, how did they do it? Like, I don't know. It's just so weird. But anyways, like, did they suck right off him? It's not like you'd have utensils and stuff. So did they like cut him open and everybody just? I don't know. Something to think about. But anyways, he ended up saying it was good. So yeah, I don't know.
Hanging off a ship. It's probably cold as hell. You said it was in Canada.
Yeah, well, yeah. So like it's ice. Like they hit an iceberg, so it's cold water. It's you know, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I thought that was, but that's, you know, factual. Like that happened, and that's all been documented and stuff. So it's like, wow. So if all else fails, just hope the other person goes first and drink their blood. That's how you survive.
Or jump straight into that water and make it quick.
But what do you guys think? Like, you know, you see like Megan Fox and whatever, and they're drinking they have vials of each other's blood and whatever. Is that a form of, you know, people, is that considered vampire when you're obviously not biting necks, but like, what do you guys think? Does that cross together, humans with the light blood with monsters?
I held back super hard to not do a segment on Hillary Clinton because we could get into some baby blood drinking stuff. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that drink blood-ish, not like a vampire, but like that consume people, right? Like
there are cults nowadays where it's groups of friends and they all think they're vampires and they drink each other's blood just for like shits and giggles. Like I
got a story on that.
But they feel like they get life, like they get life force from it, right? And that's what a vampire is doing, is, you know, getting this essence and getting strong and feeling good. So, I mean, apart from the undead part, but I guess you don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're undead.
Did you guys ever see that? Like the mid-pandemic when these people, like these rich people, weren't getting their treatments or whatever, and how they tried to put that into them not getting any baby blood, and like Sandra Bullock looked like shit. All these people just look like absolute dog shit in the middle of the pandemic. Like, do you think there is any truth to these people who drink the baby blood?
Sandra Bullock did in this interview one time was talking about some face print. Like, I don't think it's about sacrificing, or I hope not, but she did say it was like, she's like, it's some like, I don't know if she was joking, but she's like, it's blood from some young child from somewhere far away.
Yeah, no, they got
freaking
tons of those.
That's like horrid.
I mean, it's like Elizabeth Bathory back in the 1300s, whatever it was. Like, she killed 90 somewhat girls, like, to bathe in their blood. So
do you think it works?
So
though?
Gross.
Like, do you think it works?
I mean, it's been rumored since like ancient times to supposedly have effects, but it's just I don't know. I mean, they kind of spin on that for Hostel too, but
it's really creepy if that's true. Like, that's some sort of effed up, but
wouldn't you be in danger of getting some sort of like prion disease or like something weird? Like, you definitely get HIV, right? Like, if you had an open wound in your mouth or anywhere.
If the other person had it, yeah. But that's why Elizabeth Bathory only took virgins.
Yeah, I guess. People were dying of syphilis left and right back then.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be wanting to. Yeah. It's pretty gross. I don't know. That's pretty disturbing. And when I first heard about that, I was like, what? You kind of go down the rabbit hole, and they're saying even like they sacrifice the babies and the best is because it's the fear that releases something in the blood. And I'm like, that is freaking horrible. Like that's about as bad as it gets for face cream or whatever it is, however they use it. Like
It is
that's
the fear,
freaking
yeah.
terrible. Ugh.
And then they eat that adrenaline gland or whatever. What is that? They even talked about that in Fear of the Walking Dead.
The adrenal, yeah. The
Adrenal gland.
Yeah.
Adrenal gland,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, but
It's got to work somewhat, right?
I mean, who knows? I mean, vampires are. I mean, then there's the whole other thing of there are also supposed to be vampires that are energy vampires. They don't even feed off blood; they feed off people's energy, and that's how they stay young forever. I mean,
that I can see because sometimes you're around people and you're drained. You're like a deflated balloon after being around certain people, or you know, even in crowds and stuff.
We call them Democrats, but yeah.
Well, Deborah does.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, that's it. I'm passing it on. Who's going next? Who's up on deck? Because you guys have some specific stories about some actual.
Well, yours are more modern. Yours are more modern day, right, Scott?
Yeah, kind of. I'll start off with the first one. It's the human vampire of Germany. So this is a real story. It's not really vampire-ish, but I had to throw it in there because I already researched so much at that point. There was no backing up. But you can find this on the whatever the hell, Library of Congress newspaper clips. So there was this dude in 1929 to 1930 in Dusseldorf, Germany, and he basically went on a killing spree. Then there was a 26-year-old girl who finally got away from him. He used to put ropes around people's necks in alleys and then stab them to death with a stiletto. And this girl got stabbed and she managed to get away from him. She identified him to the police. So his name was Peter Curitin. When they got him into custody, he was suspected of 35 murders, but they only charged him with 16. So eventually he ended up being charged with 9 of those murders. It was 4 little girls, 4 women, and 1 man. But then he claimed he had committed hundreds of murders. And during the trial, he was boasting about how there were these three different men he knew about that were either in prison or a mental institution for murders he had committed. And then, well, let's see what else we got here. At his trial, he was the calmest one in the entire courtroom. So he just sat there, even when he was sentenced, he was the calmest person in the world. And he actually said in the middle of the trial, he stopped the trial and said, "Hey, I've already admitted to this. Why are we wasting our time? Cut off my head." So he said, when he asked why he did it, he explained that he was 1 out of 10 children living in like extreme poverty, and his dad was like a extremely violent drunk. And then he claimed that he committed his first 2 murders at the age of 9 when he drowned his 2 playmates, and that he just kept going from them. But actually, before they caught him, he wanted to go from single killings to mass murder. So he was already planning on either blowing up a train or a building with a bunch of people in it. And then, but while he was in prison, the prison guard said he was like the best prisoner they had ever seen. And then he eventually got the guillotine in July 2nd of 1931. So, I mean, his first nickname was the Human Vampire of Germany. Later, he would become to be known the second Jack the Ripper. But I was already
saying, like, how's he a vampire? Because, like, you didn't say he drinks the blood.
No, he didn't drink the blood, but I was already too far into the research, reading little tiny newspaper clippings to let that one go. So, okay, we'll jump into some vampire hunters. I looked really hard on this, and we've got the Bram Stoker, you know, you've got the Van Helsing, and that was based off of real vampire hunters. I could not find any factual names or dates of any of these vampire hunters. But the traditional vampire hunters actually date back to pre-Christianity. So the vampires that date back before Christ, they have supposedly gotten their powers. They weren't just vampire hunters, they were healers too. And they were supposed to get their powers from working with the Fae, which we did the episode on that. But once Christianity took over, they were thought to have been taught from ancient Babylonian priests. So this is all in the Balkans. So you got the Krisnik. They were shamans they were the ones that were taught from the Fae. And it goes into like this whole thing with the god P.M. And I mean, that's just goes into a whole bunch of different stuff. But then the ones after Christianity in that region, they were thought to have done black magic, like I said, taught by Babylonian priests. But another big thing back then were Sabbatarians. And a Sabbatarian is anyone who's born on a Saturday, and they were thought to have been able to actually see vampires. So if you were born on a Saturday, you could see witches, vampires, any of that shit, and then you would be like recruited into being a vampire hunter at the day. And the tradition was they would actually need to feed them meat from a sheep that had been killed by a wolf, which was pretty crazy. But then the next one we got is the Dempir. And these were born from like a male vampire and a human woman. So like Blade would have been a Dempir. And then there's like another popular anime, I guess, right now that's
there's a show coming out called Vampire Academy that's based on a book series, and Dampirs are half vampires in the books who protect the purebloods.
Yeah. And they're actually supposed to have similar traits to vampires. So they can see, hear, and smell farther than we can. And then they can also see supernatural beings, and they can actually control animals, supposedly. So, and then there was one more. We had, all those things from the tuberculosis when they would dig up the people and they were kind of preserved and all that. I guess
I'll be getting to that a little bit later on.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into that, but there actually is a guy who's researching all these people. His name is Dr. Michael Bell, and he's trying to prove that either vampires do exist or they did at one time because of all the, all the stories and stuff. But like I said, when I looked into it, this guy's got no names to work with, no dates, no anything, so... But if you want to find out more about vampire hunters, Dr. Michael Bell, he's got a couple hour-long discussions on YouTube. I'm sure they're great. And then, so I'll jump in. My last one is a New Age vampire. So, have you guys ever heard of Rod Ferrell?
No.
So this kid,
I feel like I have, but I can't think of it.
You might have. It was big news back in 1996. He was a 16-year-old kid, and he started his vampire clan gang.
Yeah.
So he grew up in a single family home. Like, you would see his dad every once in a while, but he had a young mother. His mother was 16 when she had him, and she was like super, super into vampires. And they would play this game. It's kind of like a DMD game, Vampire the Masquerade. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep. It's out. They have it out on consoles right now. Yeah.
Well, I guess they were playing like a role-playing tabletop style game.
Yeah.
But then when he became a teenager, obviously he started partying. He was drinking all the time, doing ecstasy, all sorts of shit you did back in the 90s. And I guess he kind of lost his mind, and he believed that he was his character in the game. So he thought he was a 500-year-old vampire named Visago. And then he recruited this other dude and these two girls to join his vampire clan or whatever. And then he had shortly moved to Florida and he met this girl, Heather. And she told him that her dad was like molesting her and doing all this shit. So when he was back in Kentucky, he got all of his friends and they drove down to Florida to pick her up, and their car started having trouble. So they had that Heather girl leave the garage door unlocked so she could, or they could steal the parents' car to drive back to Kentucky. And so the two girls picked him up and dropped the two boys off, that Rob Farrell and the other guy's name, I think, was Scott Anderson. And these kids were into all sorts of weird shit, like you were talking about, with like drinking the blood and like they were drinking each other's blood and doing seances and partying, and a bunch of weird goth kids at the time. But yeah, so when they went into the parents' house, when the two boys went into the parents' house, they had just dropped acid, and they were supposed to just walk into the master bedroom and steal the keys and then steal the car. And that Rod Featherline, the leader, 500-year-old vampire dude, just flipped out and bashed the fucking dad's skull in, and like huge mess. The mom came out and threw coffee in his face. Then he killed her. And then they drove to drove to Baton Rouge, and they were pulled over 5 times and let go in a stolen vehicle of the people that the police were looking for that had been murdered.
What?
Right? Yeah, no shit. The 90s was a good time to get away with shit, huh? But then eventually one of the other girls, they needed money, so she called her grandma and asked if she could borrow some money, and the grandma helped set all the kids up, because this was like national news at the time.
Yeah.
The 2 people were just beaten to death with a crowbar. And then they were arrested. And I mean, this Rob guy had his girlfriend all twisted up. She was like, during the interrogations, asking like, I need to be with Rob. I need to be with Rob. And they were in a holding cell together, which was pretty crazy too. And he was supposed to get the electric chair, but then they got rid of the death penalty in Florida. So he went on to parole, and now, or life without parole. And now it looks like he might be paroled out because he was arrested when he was 16. So.
Does he still think he's a vampire?
You can watch the interviews with him. He's probably just a bullshitter. You know,
He's probably just high when he was thinking that, but hopefully he's not. Yeah.
He's probably a sociopath for sure. Like in the videos of when he's arrested, he's like making faces at the camera, and like when the family's there and they're talking about the death, he's talking shit. He's just like fucking gone, you know, like not a good person. But,
so if he thought he was a vampire and he killed people, but did he drink the blood or taste it or take some? Or?
Oh yeah, no, they were into, like, they would have weird parties where they would all drink each other's blood, and he was
no,
like,
but the people he killed, when like the parents, like the grand,
I think they were
drink some of theirs.
He tells his story and he was like totally soaked in blood. I don't think he stopped to drink the blood though. I think he said after he killed the mom, he was like, oh shit, I just killed a dude. He didn't even register killing the mom. And his friend was like, you're covered in blood. They stole the car and fucking.
Come on, what kind of vampires are you? You drink that blood now.
But those are the vampires of modern day. And there was another one I ran across. I couldn't find it, but I heard the policeman's interview. I couldn't find the names, but I guess there was a girl hitchhiking, and she got picked up by this dude, and she said that he was dressed really nice and everything. But then he tied her up in the bathtub and started like extracting her blood with needles and drinking it. And she managed to jump out of the window handcuffed and ran to the street. Somebody picked her up, but I couldn't find anything more
scary.
about that story.
Oh my God, that would be scary.
But yeah, no, those vampires are out there, man. They're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there are those who like the body modification too, of sharpening their teeth to look like vampires.
Oh
yeah, I was gonna say that. That's so bizarre. Oh, yeah.
But I mean, Well, that was that's all you had, right, Scott?
That's
Before I
it,
go
yeah.
on? Okay, right. Well, I found my two favorite vampire cases. One which has obviously been misproven to be something else, and the other one is still up in the air because no one really knows. People try to hate on it, but there's too many unknowns in this second one. But I'll start with the older one first, and that's the Mercy Brown vampire incident, which it took place in Exeter, Rhode Island, which is about an hour away from me, I think, hour and a half, something like that. And basically, it was a family that suffered a bunch of tuberculosis cases back in 1892. And the mom died first in 1884, and she was followed by the oldest daughter in 1891, I think it was. And then another daughter and her son also caught it. And back then, friends and neighbors believed that one of the dead family members was a vampire, although they didn't use the name vampire. They just said that it's a cursed person. Like they didn't have the word vampire yet. And that was the folklore in like 19th century America. That was the folklore that if you die and people around you are getting sick all of a sudden, that you're a vampire and you're just coming back to life and you're sucking their blood. That's why they're sick. But basically, he went to court, the father, and he wanted to exhume all the bodies of his family. And they found that the bodies of Mary and Mary Olive had the expected level of decomposition. So the mother and the daughter were decaying like they're supposed to. The daughter Mercy, though, she had no decomposition and still had blood in her heart. So, of course, they thought she was undead and that she was causing her brother to slowly die. So, but I mean, they proved nowadays that because she was stored in like an outside crypt in the winter, her body was naturally safe because of that.
Preserved,
So,
yeah.
and as superstition back then made you do, they took Mercy's heart and liver and burned it, and the ashes are mixed with water, and the son had to drink it because that's how you're supposed to cure yourself of the affliction. He died 2 months later.
That's pretty terrible solution.
And what remained of her body is still buried to this day at the Baptist Church in Exeter, Rhode Island. So,
Well, who
yeah,
had to drink the
and
son's heart?
Yeah.
no one. I think by that time the fathers gave up and said, "I'm screw this. I'm moving on." But it was also, it's been suggested that this story of Mercy Brown is what gave Bram Stoker some of his ideas for Dracula. Because I mean, it was in the newspapers back then that it was taken from the case of Mercy Brown in a huge part.
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft also wrote about it in a book called The Shunned House. And if you ever heard of Aaron Mahnke, the podcaster, he has a podcast called Lore, and the first episode he ever did of it back in 2015 was about Mercy Brown, and it's also the first episode of his show on Amazon Prime.
That was a good one.
Yeah. And of course, Monster Quest did a Vampires in America episode, and Mercy Brown was like the main topic. And then they also went to some of the modern vampires that Scott mentioned, but those ones are just like cults of weirdos trying to be weird.
Yeah. Goth kids trying to get laid.
If that got you laid, man, come on.
I'm telling you,
There's
girls like that vampire thing for some reason.
I mean,
Apparently
yeah,
Megan Fox, if you want her.
maybe back in like 2005 when Transformers came out. But since then, no. But my next one is a more paranormal vampire story, and it still to this day hasn't been disproven that it actually exists. And that's the Highgate vampire in London, which supposedly this started back in the 1970s, the early 1970s, that they were going to report this. But at the Highgate Cemetery in London, people reported seeing something mysterious at night there. Or, I mean, you can't even get in at night, but a lot of people would like stand by the gates and they would see something running around inside the cemetery. The most believed account was given by a folklore scholar Professor Bill Ellis in his journal Folklore. He writes from the viewpoint of like a legend study, basically. And he just said that it's all about how people process things in the 70s and how like vampires were still becoming like a big thing because of Anne Rice's books and all that, and the multiple versions of Dracula they put out that decade. But in the late 60s, when it really first started to pick up a little bit, young people who were interested in the occult started going out at night trying to find things. And on December 21st, 1969, one of the members of the group, David Farrant, spent the night in Highgate Cemetery. He wrote that when passing the cemetery on December 24th, 1969, he had glimpsed a gray figure, which he considered to be supernatural, and asked if others had seen anything similar. On the 13th, several people replied describing a variety of ghosts said to haunt the cemetery or the adjoining Swan's Lane. Yeah, Swan's Lane. Yeah, that's weird spelling for swans, but don't know. But,
So he saw it on Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
When did he stay?
He stayed 3 days before that,
Oh, okay.
but which doesn't make sense. They saw 3 days after he stayed. That would seem like a waste of a staying in a cold cemetery on a December day. But
So it followed him home.
Winter.
but all these ghosts that people were seeing were described as a tall man in a hat, a spectral cyclist, a woman in white, a face glaring through the bars of the gate, a figure wading into the pond, a pale gliding form. Damn. Bells ringing and voices calling. Hardly two people gave the same story. So, yeah, it's just basically like going to a mall and saying, like, have you heard of this? And everybody just gives different answers. Like,
Every time I've went into the mall and asked people if they've noticed things, they don't know. I gotta start doing that again. I was at the mall today. I should have done some.
But a second local man named Sean Manchester, he was, after Farrant started talking, he wanted to go try to prove things himself. So the Hampstead and Highgate Express reported that on February 27th, 1970, as saying that he believed that a king vampire of the undead, a medieval nobleman who had practiced black magic in medieval Romania, had been brought to England in a coffin in the early 18th century by followers who bought a house for him in the West End. He was buried on that site that later became Highgate Cemetery, and basically Manchester claimed that modern Satanists had roused him in one of their cult rituals. So yeah, I mean it kind of sounds like the storyline for Dracula, if you ask me, but in a way. But Manchester claimed the only thing they could do was stake the vampire's body and then behead and burn it. But it would be illegal nowadays to do that. But in the 70s, it was still legal to do that to dead bodies for some reason. But he later admitted that the king vampire from Romania was a embellishment just to get himself in a journal. But a 1985 edition of his book also speaks of an unnamed nobleman's body brought to Highgate in a coffin from somewhere in Europe. Which, I mean, it sounds to me like he's just trying to copy Dracula, basically.
Yeah.
And he also said that March that he started seeing dead foxes in the cemetery. And the odd thing was there was no outward sign of how they died. I mean, I don't know, maybe freezing to death in March, but. And in later writings, both men reported seeing other dead foxes with throat wounds and drained of blood. So either there's a vampire in Highgate Cemetery or a chupacabra.
And just foxes, or
just foxes? Well, it's England. There's a lot of foxes. I mean, they hunted them they hunted them for centuries. So
hey, it could have been a couple goth kids trying to get laid. You left that off the table.
Well, I mean, it's 1970s London, so you know, heavy metal is starting to take place. So yeah, it's possible. And basically, this became known as the mass vampire hunt of March 1970 because Farrant and Manchester were just basically trying to one-up each other the whole month at that point. and they each were claiming that they could go destroy the spectre or vampire or ghost, whatever it was. And Manchester declared on Friday the 13th of March that he would hold an official vampire hunt, which, yeah, I don't know how that's going to go for you,
It's
but
like an Easter egg hunt.
and it's funny that's Friday the 13th, of course, because that's supposed to be a bad luck day to begin with. So
Doesn't that date back to like the Knights Templar or some crap?
yeah, it's an old Knights Templar thing, I think it was.
Yeah.
But basically, it broadcasted on TV early on the evening of the 13th, and within 2 hours, a mob of hunters from all over London and beyond swarmed over gates and walls into the locked cemetery, despite policemen trying to control them. So, yeah.
That would have been fun. It's like crazy.
But in later years, Manchester wrote his own account in a book called The Highgate Vampire in 1985. According to his narrative, he and some companions entered the cemetery unobserved by the police via the damaged railings of an adjoining churchyard and tried to open the door of one particular catacomb to which a psychic sleepwalking girl had previously led them. But try as they might, it would not budge an inch. Failing in this, they climbed down on a rope through an existing hole in its roof, finding empty coffins into which they put garlic and sprinkling holy water around.
Huh.
And evidence grew later that year, though, because on August 1st, 1970, the charred and headless remains of a woman's body were found not far from the catacomb. And the police suspected that it had been used in black magic. Soon after this, though, there was a notable surge in both Farrant and Manchester's activities. Farrant was found by police in the churchyard beside Highgate Cemetery one night in August, carrying a crucifix and a wooden stake. He was arrested, but when the case came to court, it was dismissed out of pure stupidity. But a few days later, he returned to Highgate Cemetery, but in the daytime when visits are allowed. He claims that this time he and his companions did succeed in forcing open inch by inch the heavy and rusty iron doors of a family vault, indicated by his female psychic helper. He lifted the massive lid off one coffin, believing it had been mysteriously transferred there from another catacomb. He was about to put a stake through the body it contained when a companion persuaded him to desist. Reluctantly, he shut the coffin, put garlic and incense in the vault, and came out from it. And another chapter in his book claims that 3 years after that, he discovered a vampiric horse, and he implies it was the same
Horse?
one in this.
Or
corpse.
Okay, corpse. Okay.
Vampire horse, that'd be awesome though. That's like the cow in Milo Vampire. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
spruce up the story a bit, you know what I'm saying? A little vampire horse.
But he claims that he found the same vampiric body corpse in the cellar of an empty house in the Highgate Hornsey area and staked and burned it. So basically, in his book, he just goes back and forth multiple times saying he did this, he did that, he did this, he did that. Like, I actually want to read his book. It's got to be pretty interesting. But
my question is, so this is the 70s. Did he like photograph anything?
well, not to my
book.
knowledge.
Gotta buy the book.
Like
yeah,
you got
buy the book.
You got Polaroids back, then at least like there's gotta be you could document what you're doing.
But other people also point out, like I've been saying this whole time, that his story is full of melodramatic details mirroring the Dracula mythos, including the sleepwalking girl, the vampire transported to England in a coffin corpse gorged and stinking with the lifeblood of others, with fangs and burning his eyes, his own role as a Van Helsing figure.
Well, there's a lot of details. That's how you know it's true.
What he did nowadays would be called this either ostension or legend tripping. And it basically is a way of role playing. It's what people consider him now as like a role player back then.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, they didn't have the internet. Come on.
And apparently, the Farrant and Manchester fight. It spread to a magician's duel on Parliament Hill on Friday the 13th, April 1973, which never happened. And then Farrant was jailed in 1974 for damaging memorials and interfering with dead remains in Highgate Cemetery. And he kept claiming it was all done by Satanists, not him. But it's just.
Can you imagine the poor security guard at the cemetery? That's probably so sick of these two guys.
How much trouble you think you'd get in if you dug up a corpse and stuck a stake through its heart nowadays?
Oh my gosh. And like the one guy was in court and then like went the next day.
But this case has been in popular culture somewhat too. According to the author who wrote Dracula AD 1972, which later would star Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, it was all inspired by the Highgate vampire story.
Right.
So, and also the Highgate vampire appeared as a villain in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic books. And it also appeared in an Italian horror comic book series called Dampier. So, I mean, and I've heard people on Monsters Among Us podcast also talk about the Highgate vampire and that they live in London. Supposedly they've seen things in the night at that cemetery that no one can explain. And they have found other people in there too. I know that I can find this article, but there's other people in there they found in there that were like dead and missing blood, and it's just it's too weird either.
It sounds more like a ghost story, you know, like you could definitely, because like the first thing you said, there was like a little girl and
a bunch of spirits.
Yeah.
But the compelling thing is the headless woman. Like he puts the garlic and stuff in the empty caskets, and then a headless corpse that couldn't get back into the casket or whatever. Like that's kind of, if that was documented, that was out there and found close to it. That's compelling.
Yeah. Shit, you get in so much trouble for doing that kind of stuff nowadays.
Are you kidding? Well,
I mean, you'd have to bring your papers to everybody and like, why are you in here? You just read that. I'll go wait for a beating.
So here's the question. So if you were doing this and like they couldn't get in, they couldn't budge the door open, but they crawl through a hole in the top of it, would you do that?
I wouldn't.
I mean,
I'd be scared you couldn't get back out.
Well, no, because from the inside you should be able to unlock the door.
Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because all crypts have keys usually, so.
Maybe. Yeah, like what if that's the one you can't?
Well, then you hope you become a vampire yourself, but.
Yeah, I don't want to be in a fucking box with dead people anyway. Like that.
I mean,
leave me out of that.
I don't know. I heard this story on a podcast the other day about that, where these two kids, they're supposedly in their town. There's a crypt, and if you go in there, there's a picture of a man who is buried in the crypt, and supposedly the picture can come alive and like it'll force you to stay in there forever. And like he swears he went in, and like the picture started like talking to him and like looking at him, and he swears like he went back like 2 or 3 times, but never went back again.
That's what happens when you're dropping acid.
That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, okay, but was the witness like of clear mind or?
It's one of those podcasts where you write in your story.
Yeah.
So
do you guys want to be buried? I want to be like if you could just drive me out to the woods and let wolves eat my body, that's the way I want to be disposed.
That's I 100% want to be just found in the middle of nowhere by somebody, stumbling across my bones, and it's a whole mystery. Like they just like, what is this? Like this skeleton out in the middle of nowhere. Who is this? What? Yeah. I don't care about being in the cemetery at all.
Well, imagine if you really do turn into a ghost and you're buried 6 feet underground in a box and you are stuck in this friggin' box for eternity. Like at the least, just put me up in a Walmart or a shopping mall, mummify me, let people take pictures with me. At least, like by the TV department where I got something to do. I do not want to be put in a box.
I want some to be buried, get my friends to bury me in someone I really dislike, or I don't know. I don't have any enemies, but if I did, you get buried in their backyard, so you get found there and it looks suspicious and they get in much trouble.
That'd
could
be
cause
cool.
some trouble.
Yeah. What do you want, Jeremy?
I don't know. Part of me, I mean, part of me wants to like, tell him like, go Frankenstein style. Try to bring me back. Freeze my brain like Walt Disney, so I get to go in a robot's head someday. But
I'm donating everything. Yeah, like on my card, I'm a donor. If I'm ever like able to be saved, but they get me on the side of the road, I'm goner. They're harvesting me.
but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I also like the whole like shot into space type thing.
I can see that with you. Yeah. You don't.
Darkness.
I just don't want to just be, just buried. Like it's too boring. You got to do something exciting. It's your last
Or-
hurrah.
I mean, or I like the idea of being buried in a tree.
My wife wants the pod thing.
Like that's pretty cool, but I don't know.
I just don't
I
want
don't
to
know.
wake up in the afterlife and be in a hole in the ground and pitch black. Like that, then you're going insane. We always, talk about insane ghosts and shit that, they've got these mental problems. They're doing the same thing over and over again. Imagine just waking up in darkness nonstop.
Yeah, but your spirit, like your ghost, would be gone before your body gets buried.
That's what they say.
What's worse is what if you weren't actually dead and you're buried? That's like, that used to happen. They used to have those little bells
the
because that
bell,
would
yeah.
happen. Like, that's worse to me. I'm more worried about getting buried alive than buried
Well,
dead. But
Nowadays, I mean, when you go in, I don't want any of that fucking, they embalm you too before they bury you. I don't want any of that shit either.
yeah. And then you have the creepy, well, I guess they're not all, but
Yeah, most of
many stories about the guy who does the makeup and dressing you. And so,
you got to be a little off to want that job, right? Like just a little
yeah.
bit.
What to be a mortician?
Yeah.
I actually wouldn't mind it. It's peaceful work.
It's
You got no one
quiet.
that you have no one that bothers you. You could blast whatever freaking music you want while you're doing it. Like, have you not seen iZombie? It's a pretty dope job.
You could assemble furniture with me. It's the same thing. And you're not
No, it's
around
not.
dead people.
I hate assembling furniture. Hell no. I hate assembling furniture with a passion.
I don't like being around dead people with a passion. That's weird.
I mean,
It's
I've
one of
been around-
those, if it bothers you, it does, but if it doesn't, it would be peaceful, right? You're just hanging out by yourself and putting makeup on and whatever.
All my friends when I was younger were dead inside already, so I mean, close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. That's a little too superstitious.
Would you sleep overnight in that cemetery?
Yeah, I could get
But-
loaded and sleep in a cemetery.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I remember that one Fresh Prince episode, but like I wouldn't be able to do that.
Which one's
Like,
that? I don't remember that one.
The one where they go to the college party and Will goes to drive drunk and he ends up in a cemetery and like he has like these four ghosts try to like give him life lessons.
Shit, I gotta watch that again. That sounds like a Christmas episode.
I was
What
gonna
was
say
that?
that sounds like Scrooge, but
No, kind of, but I mean, it was just funny because it's him. It's I want to say fourth or fifth season. No, it's on HBO Max.
Yeah, I gotta rewatch those again.
Yeah, I was for a while. Then I stopped because I have so many movies to watch. But oh, you'll be happy though. I finally watched The Conjuring a couple days ago.
what did you think?
But I mean, it was okay. I mean,
You still got some more to catch up on, buddy.
they're not on the list, I don't think, but we'll see. I have a lot to go back to in different sequels and stuff eventually. Anyway, I mean, I had to watch I had to watch Nightmare on Elm Street 3 today, and I totally I'm like, I haven't seen 1 or 2 in like 15 years, but okay.
It's been a long time, yeah.
And I'm like,
I've
I
never
need
seen
to.
'em.
Those are some of the best horror movies ever.
I
Even when
just
I was a kid.
I just got what the fuck, the Clowns from Outer Space. We're gonna watch that
Yep.
tonight.
Killer
I've
Clowns from
never
Outer
seen that. Yeah.
Oh, I had to watch that for a horror comedy bracket a couple months ago. That movie is so freaking hilarious.
The trailer looks funny.
It's hilarious. It's a horror comedy classic. It was supposed to be scary. I mean, it scared the shit out of kids in the 80s, but nowadays it just looks so corny.
I guess they're remaking the movie and making a game about it.
Well, there's been a game about it forever. Like there was a game back on Super Nintendo back in the day or something like that that had it, or Atari.
Well, I think that they're making a new game.
Yeah, they are. I've seen ads for it online.
So what's your top pick for Halloween? Like it's coming up. I went
Yeah,
to
it is
Spirit
coming up.
Halloween today, 2 Spirit Halloweens today.
Jesus. I haven't got dragged to any of those yet, but I don't know. I mean, what can we do in Halloween that we haven't already done that's Halloween themed? I mean,
We definitely got to
The
do the movie one the week before.
What if we do
We
the
could do-
actual devil? Like talk about people who have tried to conjure him up in their stories about Halloween rituals where you hopefully we don't
That
actually
works.
conjure him up. Because
I
that's scarier than that.
I don't think I've ever actually heard a paranormal podcast do the devil himself either.
Yeah.
Have you?
I mean, besides the episode of the guy I talked to who saw the devil 3 times, but I mean, I never heard of
But we're
anybody
giving
actually
this
doing
away. It's live. We're giving away our secrets here.
Well, that'll give him more opportunity to come back and watch
Yeah.
our
Yes.
episode.
it. And to the, I mean, how many listeners do we have? How many watchers do we have right now, Scott?
1.
So to Scott's friend, he's fine knowing,
It's probably a she.
or she. I said
But
friend. I
yeah,
didn't say-
yeah. I mean, that
Oh, I
could be
just
pretty
ate.
scary. Halloween night. Bring up
Yeah.
Satan
So-
himself.
That's a good one.
Alright.
That is a good one. What are we doing next
That-
week?
Good question.
I'm
Which-
out. It's you guys. It's you guys. It's your turn.
That's Jeremy's turn.
Is it my turn again?
Yeah, I did the witches. you
Oh,
Oh
did
yeah, true.
vampires.
Maybe it's time we do Dogmen. Let's just keep we did vampires. Let's do the version of
Big guys.
werewolves.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Dogmen it is.
So it all leads up to Halloween eventually. So let's just keep going with this. We basically are doing all Halloween themed episodes right now anyway. So, which is
Yeah,
vampires,
no.
where that's all Halloween stuff. So it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Working our way up to the big guy. So yeah.
Got my Halloween shirt on.
Oh, look at you. You're like right into
Hell
this
yeah.
already.
Halloween's the
That's awesome.
best holiday there is. Come on.
Me too. I love it. Honestly, it's so much fun. I'm so excited.
It was better before I didn't have kids. Just saying, but
Yep. Well,
It's still fun when you got
you do.
kids.
Yeah. It's just different fun.
no, it was more fun not having to worry about your own kids and just going out with your family's kids and just drinking the whole time. But
My
Then
kids
you got
don't
everybody-
really like it. Do your kids like it?
oh, they love trick or treating. Oh God,
Ah,
my daughter last year at 5 years old was at 4 years old was a killer clown for Halloween.
that's cool.
She picked out her costume
That's cool.
That's cool.
because she loves Pennywise. So
Yeah. My kids when they were young, we watched all kind of shows that probably parents shouldn't let their kids watch, but they love scary movies, love them too. So yeah.
My kids watch the synopsis of the movie and then tell me they already know what happened. Like they just want that instant computer video game gratification. They don't like
Yeah.
trick or treating. They don't like the decorations. It's crazy.
I mean, I don't care about the decorations. I like trick or treating because I like candy. But
I like, getting dressed up. I like seeing the kids in costumes. So I don't know. I like the whole thing. I like it all.
It breaks
I don't
up
know.
the monotony, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
my wife made me dress up like 2 years in a row, and I was like, yeah, no more. I'm done. It's a waste of money for me to put on a freaking costume for a couple hours. It's a waste of money.
Use the
Oh,
same
come
one
on.
every year.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna go as a dad every year. That way I can stroll out in my wife beater and my boxers and be good.
Yeah, I made a scarecrow costume one year, like a mask, paper mache out of my like Carhartt pants, and I got to carry all the kids stuff and all the other stuff, and wearing that mask when you're like trying
Yep.
to take pictures and carry all the crap.
You bring a wagon.
I just paint my face now.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fun stuff. Well, I'm glad we got it sorted out. That's pretty
Yep.
exciting.
So Dogmen next week.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
Dogmen.
that.
And I actually haven't heard anything about Dogman. I saw them pop up like 2 years ago, and they were just everywhere. So
I saw a really cool picture. Actually, I'll try and find it on Facebook. Somebody had, it's a black face of one. It's like pretty spooky looking. That'd be kind of cool to post.
yeah, send me pictures or any links too, and then we can bring them up on the show. You got
Okay,
the
yeah.
volume for the links, like
Yeah. I'll send you a link that we're definitely bringing up for the show. So yeah, 100%.
yeah, that'll be cool. We got the sound now, and I'll try to
Yep.
go out and get some random on the street reports if anybody's heard of Dogman.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Every other one I did, nobody had heard of it, and they were like pretty mainstream things. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
Stockman's pretty well, yeah, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
well,
But I think that's all we got for this week.
14. Yeah, I think this is 14. Yeah, last one was 13. So episode 15 next week.
Sweet, we're on a roll.
Okay, well, I'll have all the video hopefully uploaded probably Tuesday, and then podcast to be uploaded Saturday or Sunday. So we're on a bunch of right wing YouTube alternatives. So, they're the only ones that make alternatives to YouTube, though. So what can I say?
That's funny. Well, whatever. We'll bring entertainment to the, yeah. You never know where your followers are coming from.
Well, they're all doing Biden videos. They don't want to, go from doing a Biden video to YouTube so they can look up Dogman, right? We got
Yeah.
them covered.
Yeah.
They can watch president videos and then go straight to Dogman on rumble.com and BitChute and Odyssey and whatever other ones
Wait,
we're on.
sounds good.
I stayed away from the ones that were like doing a lot of child stuff, so we're not on any of those. We're good there.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Didn't know those existed, but okay.
yeah, no, I looked into all of them, and there are quite a few.
All
So-
right, well, interesting. Sad, but interesting.
Sad, but interesting.
But we will be back next week with Dogman. Goodbye, faithful listeners.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good evening.